What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Hoops Hub YouTube channel. Today, we're talking all things Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I'm sorry, Bucks fans. It seems like now more than ever, Giannis's time in Milwaukee may be coming to an end. He didn't, to his credit, he didn't walk in their office and say, trade me right now. I'm done with this team. Get me the hell out of here. No, he's open to a new home. And given the relationship Giannis has had with Milwaukee since being drafted, I like to think that Giannis also wants Milwaukee to get a fair deal back in any trade. So I don't think Giannis is trying to use his leverage just yet just to try to get out of there. He will be a free agent eventually. So if he really wanted out, he could get out. But he wants to win. And there's lots of teams in the league that could use a player like Giannis and compete for a championship this year. So let's check out just some potential packages, who we think has the best odds at trading for Giannis from the Milwaukee Bucks. And shout out to the great people at ESPN too, Bobby Marks, with this article on the trade deadline. What should the Bucks do with Giannis Antetokounmpo? Well, when Giannis says he wants a trade, you listen. That's pretty much all you can do, is listen to offers and find the best deal. At some point in this article, it's mentioned there's three things Milwaukee needs to look for in a trade: get younger, bolster up their draft capital again, because they traded a lot of it away during the Giannis era. They don't have very many valuable picks right now, or find a win now player. I don't think the Bucks necessarily need a win now player in this trade. If they were going to go after a win now player, they would try to do so without trading Giannis. But should a certain player that they feel fits their timeline and will help them still compete in games rather soon, that may be something they jump on. But there's a lot of teams in this article. So 11 franchises with the most to offer here. We start off with the Atlanta Hawks. Just traded away Trae Young. So clearly they're looking for a new, not a new system, a new culture in Atlanta, building around Jalen Johnson, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dyson Daniels. Here's the crazy thing: Atlanta does have an opportunity at a top pick this year in a stacked draft class with Darren Peterson, DeBonsa, Cam Boozer, Koa Pete. Atlanta has the more favorable between New Orleans and Milwaukee. That is a huge draft pick considering how the New Orleans Pelicans are playing this season. So, should that pick end up in the top three, you very well could see that being, where Milwaukee would want to pivot. But obviously, you don't know that until the end of the season. You don't know that until the draft lottery hits. Does Milwaukee kind of waste this season of Giannis's career and hold off and not trade him until the offseason? I don't necessarily see that. I think if Giannis is saying a week before the deadline he's open to finding a new place to play, I think that means he doesn't want to finish the season in Milwaukee. So I'd understand it for the Milwaukee organization, trying to get the best possible draft capital out of Giannis. Yeah, you would wait until the lottery and try to get one of those top three picks for one of these potentially generational stars. But will Milwaukee, I should say, wait that long? That I'm not sure. You do see as well, there's more draft capital. You got 2027 first, 26 less favorable between Cleveland and Utah, a swap again in 28, and they have their 29 to 32 first round pick. So a lot of draft capital here coming from the Atlanta Hawks. You also got to remember Zaccharie Ricochet. He's a former number one overall pick. Still only, how old is Ricochet? Only 20 years old. Still untapped potential there. And again, a former number one overall pick. So definitely a player that I would expect to be moved if Atlanta makes that deal. Detroit would love Giannis, that is for sure. They have the contracts, they have the young players and draft picks, but they are the best team in the Eastern Conference right now. And do you throw that all away at a home run swing for Giannis? History will tell you no, they shouldn't. You look at the Brooklyn Nets and the haul that they sent out for James Harden to team up with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Didn't really work out. You look at some of these other trades involving play. You look at, again, Kevin Durant to Phoenix. That did not work out. So when you have a good team in front of you, it's super risky to blow it all up for one player. Now, Giannis is a top 5 player in the NBA. There's no denying that. The Detroit Pistons acquiring Giannis and playing him alongside Cade Cunningham, I'm sure they lose Jalen Duren in any deal for Giannis, but you combine Giannis with a guy like Ausar Thompson, who again would probably be moved for Giannis. That's the thing here. A lot of the players that I would like to see play with Giannis outside of maybe Cade probably get dealt if Detroit goes aggressive for Giannis. They do have a lot of first round draft capital as well. They have all their picks from 2026 to 2032. How valuable are those picks going to be, though, with the Pistons looking like a team that will be contending in the Eastern Conference for years to come? I mean, first round picks are all subjective. You don't know what the Pistons in 2 years could be looking at a lottery pick. So that's the risk that kind of comes with it. But I don't see the Pistons gutting their team when they're the number 1 seed in the East. I could see maybe if Giannis doesn't get traded by the offseason, if Detroit doesn't make it to the conference finals, maybe that's when they decide, hey, we got to make a shakeup. But again, that's if Giannis is still in Milwaukee by the end of the season. And right now, signs look like that might not be the case because you've got teams that are going to be aggressive and try to get Giannis this year before the deadline so they can compete for a championship. Golden State being one of those teams. You want to capitalize on the rest of Stephen Curry's, I'm not going to say prime, but the rest of Stephen Curry's playing days where he's still playing at a high level. You probably throw Jimmy Butler in there. You definitely throw Jonathan Kuminga and Podziemski in there, as you see here. But the Jimmy Butler contract is the one that I think throws this all off. I just can't understand. I get if Milwaukee is trying to tank and try to get high draft picks, that Jimmy Butler would help with that because he's obviously not going to play. He's coming off a torn ACL. But does Milwaukee, that's the thing. Does them tanking really make it worth trading Giannis? Tanking, I feel like, is so risky because you look at teams like the Charlotte Hornets, the Utah Jazz, the Washington Wizards, who have been bad for the last 5 years and have not gotten a single number 1 overall pick. Now, they've gotten some great players. You look at Charlotte with LaMelo, Con Knipple, Brandon Miller. The Jazz just got Ace Bailey. The Wizards, Alex Sarr, a couple other, very good young players. But again, they haven't gotten that number 1 pick. And this is a draft class where, yeah, there's great players. From 1 through 10, you're going to get a great player. You're probably going to see freshmen go from 1 through 7, all of those top 7 picks. But is it worth risking? You're trading away Giannis. Is it worth risking not getting a top pick and ending up somehow falling in the lottery, say, to the back half? Now you're talking about you traded Giannis and tanked for a number 9 overall pick that you used to draft whoever. Not necessarily what I think they would like from Giannis Antetokounmpo, but the Warriors offer is very interesting because I think Giannis would enjoy playing with Steph Curry. I mean, who wouldn't? And they do have some young players to include, and they have a few first-round picks that they can offer. I get why the deal difficulty in this article is only at a 2, but I don't know if Jimmy Butler obviously he's not the main focal point of a trade from Milwaukee's perspective, but I don't know if they'd be willing to take on that Jimmy Butler salary and basically say, all right, the next 2 years, we're not going to compete. And we know that. We're going to tank and get good draft picks. I don't know if I see Milwaukee doing that after trading Giannis and being one of the top teams in the East to falling off so quickly. Houston, they got a blockbuster last offseason, I should say, with Kevin Durant. They do have some draft capital. You look at the first-round pick from Brooklyn, another first-round pick from Phoenix in 27. They do have the most favorable between Dallas and Phoenix in 2029. Amen Thompson would most likely get traded for Giannis in this deal. I think if you're the Houston Rockets, you got to go for it. That's why you traded for Kevin Durant, because of the fact that you want to win now. You don't make a trade for Kevin Durant if you don't think you can win right now. And I think Houston realizes they're not built to win just yet. Amen Thompson is great. Şengün is great. Tari East and Jabari Smith, great young players, not ready to lead you to a championship. Giannis and Kevin Durant, now that's a duo that can lead you to a championship. But are you willing to throw away the next 5, 8 years of your team with guys like Amen Thompson and Reed Shepherd and all these other top picks that you used? Are you willing to throw that all away for maybe 3 years of KD and Giannis? I mean, Kevin Durant is now how old? 37. Kevin Durant is not going to play deep into his 40s. Kevin Durant is probably done when he turns 40. I mean, LeBron, it looks like he might be done now, and he hasn't even announced anything yet, but he's getting up there, and he looks like he's done. Kevin Durant, by that point, will probably also be feeling the same way. So I think if you're the Houston Rockets, you have to make this deal. This is kind of the last ditch effort to win with Kevin Durant. I think they realize they're probably not beating Oklahoma City. They might struggle against San Antonio. They might not beat Denver if Jokic is healthy and playing at a high level. I think they realize they're as great as they are. The Western Conference is so tough. You need two superstars to win you a championship. And I love Amen Thompson. I love a lot of the other young players, Jabari Smith, for example. I don't think that they're ready to win Houston an NBA championship. So I love, if I'm a Houston Rockets fan, I would absolutely welcome trading some of these young corner pieces of your team for a Giannis Antetokounmpo. My Miami Heat, I'm all in on this. I am praying that it happens, that Pat Riley won't fall asleep again. And the only tough part is that they don't have the draft capital. If you wait till the offseason, they can offer maybe 4, but again, you're risking waiting till the offseason and seeing if Giannis is still somehow available. They do have a homegrown talent in Tyler Hero. He's from Wisconsin. The fans love him. He would certainly be a player to watch in this deal. Andrew Wiggins, playing some of the best defense in the NBA this year. And they're both free agents in 2027. You have the expiring contract of Terry Rozier, which is certainly big for a team looking to open up cap space and tank a little bit and then go out and acquire talent when they have the money, because we know Milwaukee is in cap hell with how much they have to pay Damian Lillard, Miles Turner, Giannis. They can't afford anything right now. So getting an expiring contract like Terry Rozier would help the Milwaukee Bucks a lot. The question is, does Pat Riley and the Heat, are they willing to throw in a Kel'el Ware? I think Kel'el Ware has the most value out of these young players. Jaime has been great. He's certainly a name to watch in this deal. Niko Jovic is, a relatively cheap deal, the 4-year contract he signed, but it depends how badly they would like Jovic to be on their team. It's going to be tough for Miami to make this deal. It is, but we know they're going to be aggressive. They're going to be one of the top teams going after Giannis. Remember, back in the bubble in 2020, there was rumors that Giannis expressed interest in playing under Spo and with the Miami Heat. But the big question comes down to, can they include enough young prospects to make up for the lack of draft capital? That's really what it ends up coming down to. So it's going to be difficult. And I don't think Miami is going to have the greatest offer necessarily. But if Riley can do what Riley does best, it's certainly a possibility. I mean, at this point, they could even trade Norman Powell, who's having a career year this season with the Heat, just because if that's what it takes to get Giannis, you do it. The only player on Miami that I think is untouchable is Bam Adebayo, because they know players want to play with Bam Adebayo. You trade Bam Adebayo away, and the destination of playing in Miami does not seem nearly as attractive as it does with Bam. So we'll see what happens with the Heat. They do also have rookie Yakashonis, who's had some bright moments this year that they could include in a deal. We'll see what happens there. Minnesota, very similarly, doesn't have a lot of draft capital. They actually have no first-round picks available. They only have a swap in 2028, But they do have guys like Julius Randle, Nas Reed, and Jaden McDaniels who, honestly, you give up those three, it is not necessarily gutting the team. It certainly is a lot to trade for one player. It is. But Anthony Edwards and Giannis Antetokounmpo, you fill out the pieces around them with some, veteran players. I still think that's a team that can compete in the Western Conference. But again, similarly to Miami, do they have the draft capital to get it done? But these are the two teams that I think are going to be the most aggressive in pursuing Giannis too, is Miami and Minnesota. So they're both, it kind of works out in each other's favor that you don't have a team like the Golden State Warriors, for example. Yes, Golden State will probably be aggressive, but not as aggressive to the point where they would include all of these first round picks. The Detroit Pistons, who have 6 first round picks that they could trade going into all the way up to 2032. And obviously, they can't trade all of them, but a lot of picks to choose from that they could trade. They probably won't be as aggressive because they're already the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference. So for Minnesota and Miami, who both don't have a lot of draft capital to put in a Giannis trade, at least they're the two that are going to be the most aggressive at going after Giannis. So they're kind of both in the same boat. Miami is sitting here going, well, we don't have the draft capital, but that's okay. Neither does Minnesota, and vice versa. So I would love to see the duo of Giannis Antetokounmpo and Anthony Edwards. I think that'd be really fun to watch. Again, as a Miami Heat fan, you see this stuff in the background. I'm obviously hoping he goes to Miami, but we'll have to see if that ends up happening. Moving on here, the New York Knicks, another team that very similarly to the Heat and the Timberwolves, another team that is going to be very aggressive at pursuing Giannis and doesn't necessarily have the draft capital to get him. I mean, you know damn well if the New York Knicks trade for Giannis, Karl Anthony Towns is going to get included. That can kind of make up for not having the draft capital because Cat is a player who is young-ish. He is 30. So he's in his prime. He's not necessarily a project or, a player with untapped potential that you don't know what you're getting. You know what you're getting in Cat. Great offensive player, good rebounder, not the biggest hustler on defense, but he will score the ball. And now, if you're trading Giannis Antetokounmpo, if you look at the players that Milwaukee can get back, Cat may be the most talented out of any one singular player they can get in return for Giannis, outside of maybe Jalen Duren. If the Pistons were to offer him, you could argue is a better interior center, just not as good of a shooter. You could look at a team like the Timberwolves and a player like Jaden McDaniels or Julius Randle or Nas Reed as being close to the talent level of Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, we just saw the main 2 pieces of the Karl Anthony Towns to New York trade was Julius Randle to the Timberwolves. So I would say comparable offer there as far as players and talent. You look at potential. I think Kel'el Ware has as much potential as Karl Anthony Towns had as a young player. Shoots the ball well, 7 feet, could use a little bit more motor on the defensive side of things, but is a great rebounder. So again, this does make it difficult for the Knicks, but similarly to the Heat and the Timberwolves, they're going to be the most aggressive. They're willing to throw in Karl Anthony Towns. They're probably willing to throw in a Mikal Bridges or a Josh Hart or both. Then you get into the questions of, well, okay, is Brunson and Giannis and OG, if they can keep OG, and then all of these other young, veteran, whatever you want, whatever players they could fill around those 3 guys, is that enough to get you to the NBA Finals? We'd have to see what the team looks like after a deal, but it's very intriguing about this Giannis scenario that the 3 teams that I expect to be the most aggressive and, have the most reason to trade for Giannis right now before this deadline, all 3 of them are in similar situations where they just don't have the draft capital to be like, here's a buttload of first-round picks and a couple filler players, will take Giannis. No, they're going to have to gut their rosters a little bit. They're going to have to trade away some talent, but you're getting a top 5 player when healthy back. That is another thing to keep in mind with all this too. Giannis has missed some time with a couple calf injuries this season, and I never would want to speak this into existence, but it is hard not to mention when talking about calf injuries, especially calf strains and whatnot. And you look at Tyrese Halliburton in the finals last year, it's hard not to make that connection that when you kind of force players to over push injured calves, that's when you start to have Achilles issues. And a player like Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is so reliant on his athleticism and his size, a torn Achilles could be a career altering injury. So, would never want that to happen. As a basketball fan, you never wish for something like that. But I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention it because it is a factor, I think, in dealing for Giannis Antetokounmpo. But it's one of those guys where you have to take that risk. If you want a top 5 player, you got to take that risk. And Giannis is very well worth taking that risk. The Oklahoma City Thunder would be, I mean, that would be a league shattering trade right there. How they would be able to get it done and afford it, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they have all the picks in the world that they could trade. They do have some young contracts, some expiring contracts like Dieng, Isaiah Hartenstein, Lou Dort. These guys are all on team options. So, say Milwaukee doesn't want to pay these guys, they could let them walk if they choose. They have some rookie scale contracts. This one just comes down to, does Oklahoma City and Sam Presti, do they want to break the league? Do they want to destroy any NBA fans' hopes of their team winning a championship by taking what was already a great team last year, a championship winning team last year, and adding Giannis Antetokounmpo for it? And I don't think they'd have to give up that much of their core. I mean, you probably at most trade Jalen Williams or Chet Holmgren, one of the two, but that's at worst. After that, you still have SGA. You still have whichever one of those two that you don't trade. You still have, I'm sure, some of these depth pieces like Hartenstein, Lou Dort, Dieng. You probably don't have to trade all of your rookies or rookie scale contracts because of all the picks that you have. So you get to keep those guys. So the Thunder would be one of those trades where it almost feel like, okay, we know you can do it. We all know you have the picks to get it done. But why? Why are you doing this to us? Why can't you just let us have a little glimmer of hope? And instead, if the Thunder keep losing games, which I don't think they will, they had like a rough stretch of a week or two and then got right back on a roll. If the Thunder find a way to make this happen, it will be incredibly scary for the rest of the NBA. And I know the Western Conference is tough, but it'd be hard not to look at a team with SGA, Giannis, one of Chet or J-Dub, and all these other guys, and not expect them to win a championship. That would be an interesting one. That's one that I'm certainly hoping doesn't happen just because of the fact that I want to see competitiveness. I don't want to see Oklahoma City run away with another championship. Portland would be very interesting. They could try and speed up their timeline because they have some young, talented players. Denny Advia has kind of taken an all-star leap this season. You got, young guys like Kamara, Shadon Sharp. And they do have the draft capital as well. They also have some draft capital with Milwaukee. So if Milwaukee wants that 2028 first-round pick back and have, the preference of the two, that's something they could look at from Portland, who obviously got that in the Damian Lillard trade. So an interesting one here. I'd be surprised to see Portland go after it just because I don't think Portland expects to win now. Even with Giannis, I don't think they would expect to be able to win a championship just by bringing in Giannis and trading away some draft capital and some of these young, blossoming players. But this whole video is about who has the assets to trade for Giannis, and Portland does. They do have the assets to trade for Giannis. I would just be very surprised if they decided, hey, let's go out and trade for Giannis and, hope that he can lead this team to competing. Because, like I said, the Western Conference is a grind. It's brutal. And Portland is not ready for that. Even with Giannis on that roster, Portland is not ready to take on, the beasts of the West, like the Spurs, the Thunder, the Nuggets. They're not ready for that. So I'd be shocked if Portland ended up making this deal. And finally here, excuse me, two more. The San Antonio Spurs, another very interesting one. Wemby and Giannis would be probably the most terrifying front court duo in all of the NBA. I mean, you talk about the interior defense there. Nobody's scoring in the paint on Wemby or Giannis. And then you put the two of them together. Yeah, that's honestly terrifying to think about. And they have some of the draft capital. They have the young players, Dylan Harper, Stephon Castle. I don't think they would trade De'Aaron Fox, but it's a possibility. And despite trading 4 first-rounders for De'Aaron Fox, they still have some swaps available. So they have draft capital. They have great young players. And this is one that I could very well see happening as well. I mean, I think the Spurs realize that they're a contender now. Wemby's only in, his 3rd year. But they are a contender. They are very well on their way to being one of the top teams in the Western Conference. And I don't think they necessarily want to wait for Dylan Harper to develop or Stephon Castle to develop or Carter Bryant or any of these, top picks that they've got in the last few years. If they have an opportunity to trade one of those guys, if they can trade Dylan Harper and maybe Carter Bryant and maybe some first-round picks for Giannis and not have to touch Wemby, De'Aaron Fox, or Stephon Castle, yeah, I think the Spurs take that any day of the week. And they would honestly probably become the favorite for me to win the whole thing. Just because Giannis and Victor Wembanyama on the same team, I think that's unguardable. I really do. I think that's an unstoppable duo. And then you still would have guys like De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle. I'm assuming maybe they'd have to deal Castle to get Giannis too. Either way, you have a star point guard in De'Aaron Fox. Throw some good defensive players like Harrison Barnes or whoever, Jeremy Shohan at the 3, and that's a team that I think wins the NBA championship. So that would be a scary one if the Spurs somehow wind up with Giannis. But last one here, Toronto Raptors. Again, kind of similarly to Portland. I mean, Toronto's a little different because they are winning games this year. They are one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, and I think they might be playing ahead of expectations, but they are up there. And you see, they've got plenty of first-round picks to trade. So like you want to look at draft capital. The Raptors are up there with a team like the Pistons that has a lot to work with. But again, do I see them making this deal? No, because I think if you're Milwaukee, you ask for Scotty Barnes, and I don't think Toronto is willing to give up all of these picks and Scotty Barnes, who's kind of starting to make a run at one of the more underrated players in the NBA. If you can get Giannis without having to deal Scotty Barnes, the Raptors immediately become a very dangerous team. Say you throw in Brandon Ingram, R.J. Barrett, and maybe some young players like Grady Dick or Colin Murray Boyles. Now you've got a deal that I think leaves Milwaukee with some solid players, leaves Toronto with, obviously Giannis and Scotty, and still enough decent players around them to still compete. But again, if I'm Milwaukee, I'm asking for Scotty Barnes in return for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Just like if I were them, I would ask for, at least Risa Shea from the Hawks. I'd ask for Kel'el Ware from the Heat. I'd ask for, some of these young players. Like you would definitely need a Kuminga from Golden State. You need to throw in some of these top young players if you want to make a trade for Giannis possible. But either way, there's a couple other ones that have tradable first that I don't see happening. The Brooklyn Nets, the Utah Jazz, they certainly have a lot of picks to swing a deal, but I don't see why. That's a lot to trade for a player, because then you have to convince Giannis to sign an extension. Giannis is probably not signing an extension in Utah or Brooklyn. So why they would make such a steep offer. Maybe they just really want to move the needle and make a blockbuster deal to get their fans excited again. But I don't know. My guess, my prediction is if Giannis gets traded by the deadline, because I still don't think it's a guarantee. You know, the way that the Bucks and Giannis have operated with these trade scenarios, it's been kind of weird just with how little they'll say, yes, we're looking to trade Giannis compared to we'll field some offers. Giannis might be ready for a new home. You know, that to me is saying we don't want to trade Giannis. We're still trying to figure out a way to keep him, but we need to be prepared for the chance that Giannis does want out, and then we have to trade him before we lose him for nothing. So, my prediction: three most aggressive teams, like I said: Miami, Minnesota, New York. I'm certainly hoping for Miami, but I could see any one of those three teams getting him. Where do you guys think Giannis Antetokounmpo ends up? Does he stay with Milwaukee through the deadline, or are his playing days with the Bucks officially over? Like I said, the three teams that I think are going to be the most aggressive: New York, Miami, Minnesota. Will Giannis even be traded before the deadline? We'll know in about a week. So we should have that answer very shortly. But hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. It certainly goes a long way. Check out the Hoops Hub, the.Hoops Hub on Instagram, TikTok for more short form content. If you guys enjoy my stuff, make sure you check out VFred's Media, Locker Room SM, the regular fan show. That's where you'll see all sorts of general sports, takes, highlights, all that great stuff. Me talking about more than just basketball. Because yes, I love basketball. It's my passion. I still watch some other sports. I still have some fun stuff to say. So make sure you guys check those out. I hope y'all enjoyed. Almost trade deadline time. Very exciting. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks again for watching. We'll be back with more from the Hoops Hub in the next one. Peace.